going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to the Mac and Fish podcast. I'm Coach McKinley Roll, and I'm here with my co-host, Charles Fishbine, better known as Fish. Fish, what's going on?
What's up?
Hey, also here with our other co-host, Corey Long. Corey, what's up?
Back on a Bucks bye week here, excited to see you. By the way, McKinley told me Anthony Lynn was going to get fired. I said he had a lot of wins left because of the schedule, and he did, and he managed to lose all of them with like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So today's down by 35-0 to the Patriots. So yeah, all right, Anthony Lynn, you and Adam Gase can definitely go get your walking papers as soon as the season's over. And, hopefully he'll get another job.
I watched the Dolphins today. They tried everything in their power to make red zone offense go back about 40 years. I mean, they had it on the 7-5-3 and kicked 3 field goals. I'm still wondering how you have it on the 7, and they have a running quarterback and never ran him once. They decided to just, bam 30. They went into the Jeff Bowden playbook on a couple of those goal line plays, Oh, that was the rainbow. Hey, wham 40 or whatever. They ran their running back right up the hole, and he got stuffed about 5 times.
If Tua is going to be successful, he's got to use his power play and get rid of Chan Gailey, because Gailey's in love with Fitzpatrick. I don't think he's going to make that kid look good. So
I got to redirect this conversation, man.
Oh my God,
we're going off the rails quickly, but hey, we got a lot to cover tonight. Wow. So let's hop into it. Obviously, the state of Florida requires you to know that it's probably the best football played in the United States in this state. And right now, the state series are going on. Some state title championship matchups have already been decided, but you still have teams vying in the Final Four. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and the teams and, who we expect to come out of which classification and teams to watch of that nature. So for 1A, you have Baker going against Hawthorne. Okay. Do you guys know anything about either team, or, who do you like in that matchup?
The head coach at Wildwood for 1 year, so maybe that guy could tell us what's going on.
I know,
Fish doesn't like to cover football in places with less than 300 people population.
Hey,
he's never going to go to Baker or Hawthorne.
Wait a second. I actually went to when Cornelius Ingram was, I think he was at Hawthorne. He was there, so I went there. You can't. Hey, this ain't one of those I didn't go there. I went to Hawthorne. I ain't gonna say that I know much else other than Cornelius Ingram, but the fact that Madison County is not in a state championship is the biggest surprise. I mean, who would have ever thought that at that level they wouldn't have just waltzed into another state title? But this is a year of crazy, so what else can you expect?
Well, I also think that, this is also probably one of Coach Co's lesser talented teams that he's had at Madison County. Hawthorne looks pretty good for them to beat Wildwood and then go and on the next week and beat Madison County, the reigning state title champions. I like Hawthorne in this matchup. For 2A, you have University Christian going against Champagnat. Fish, a little bit about, probably both teams. I'm sure there's talented players in the smaller, private school classifications. What do you think?
Champagnat's been there, done it. They've been there. Mike Tunzel started this whole thing at Champagnat Catholic, and ever since he got his team to the state title, which was probably one of the more talented teams you'd ever see in a state title game, they've continued their success. They had it with Coach Marcone, Dennis Marcone, and now their new coach has done a very good job. They have some good players that have been there. Andres Borregales, who's the kicker there, actually is committed to Miami. He was at Chaminade last year. Malik Rutherford, who's a wide receiver. Donovan Jones. These kids have all been there, done it. The one thing about this team is at the level they're at, they're so much more talented than the teams they usually play that are from the North End. But this is one time where they're kind of playing a similar team. University of Christian's basically the Champagnat Catholic. The only difference is they're not in a parking lot; they're school. So they, they are. They actually have an actual school and church that they're part of. So
the one thing that is constantly given Champagnat the advantage against those schools is that UC tends to, they're very talented, but they have to split talent with Bowles. They have to split talent with Trinity Christian. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of schools in that same Jacksonville area. They're all pretty similar that offer similar things. So whereas I think Champagnat Christian is kind of now like the school for that particular area down in Hialeah, they don't have to split. They don't have to split as much as UC does. I've seen a lot of good University Christian teams, a lot of good Trinity Christian teams, obviously a lot of good Bowles' teams, and I always feel like those three schools kind of, that they end up splitting that same pool of talent that doesn't go to one of the Jacksonville City schools.
But you look, they played a very tough schedule, Champagnat. They played Chaminade, and they stayed with them. They lost 27-14, but they stayed with them. They played Monsignor Pace. This is a bigger classification private school and won 35-0. They then go and play True Prep, which is university school, and they lost 47-29, beat American Heritage Plantation, put 65 up on Glades Day. This is a team that they are very well versed on how to play bigger programs, and I don't think anything that University of Christian throws at them, they're going to be surprised with. I mean, Champagnat's got speed. They have guys up front that are big. They got talent, and they're basically, like I said, they're a team that has landed a lot of Division I players, but in the classification of 2A, it's almost unfair. I mean, they are that good at that level.
Yeah, let's be honest. You look at the Broward-Dade level of dominance they've had in the last several years. I mean, they've either won 6 out of 8 or 7 out of 8. When it comes to the classifications, it's hard to go against a Dade County team, especially one that's so battle tested and has won, and is no one's going to be unfamiliar with the situation. I think experience counts for so much. When you get experience in your schedule, I think just count for so much. So I think Champagnat's going to win.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Never doubt experience as well as talent. And Champagnat is definitely the more talented team. Heading to 3A, which I think is probably the best matchup, the most talented teams playing each other, where you have Trinity Christian of Jacksonville playing Chaminade. I think that's going to be a battle. Trinity Christian is loaded in Jacksonville, obviously, but so is Chaminade. So, again, we talked about playing those level of competition. Trinity Christian these are two programs that are used to winning, right? I think it's going to be a matchup that could go either way. They both played quality teams throughout the year, and I don't think one scale is going to tip one way or the other. So I'm looking forward to seeing that matchup. What do you guys think?
Well, if I'm going to take this one, the one thing is, Chaminade, the experience of being there, Coach Jones has done a phenomenal job. I mean, here's a guy that was at Hallandale and almost beat the Dalvin Cook, Joseph Yearby team at Hallandale that had Zach Moss, and they had the Huntley kid, and they got close. Now he goes to Chaminade, and he's built basically a dynasty there. Mark Guandola had coached there when I first got in the business and built a nice little dynasty, but I think Coach Jones has taken it to an even higher level. This team expects to be in state titles every year now. Like, that's their program plays for that. And this is a team that wasn't very good at the beginning of the year that got better at the end of the year. I remember they struggled early on. They played American Heritage. I think they scored 3 or 10 points. They weren't very explosive on offense, but they gradually get better. And I think a lot of it is because they're not afraid to play, 6 and 7 and 8 teams. They play higher than they are. So when they get to the playoffs, whether they win or lose, they're so experienced of taking on talent or more. When they get to state, it's basically usually a team just waiting for slaughter. Now, Trinity Christian's a team that we've seen for years. Since I've been in this business, it's been 15 years. Coach Dormany has done a phenomenal job up there. I mean, I remember all the way back to Gerard Ross, who's on, all on that staff now, coaching a kid that played at Florida State and now is coaching, and he's done a great job of getting some top kids to go there. But you look at their players, the Trayon Webb kid. Here's a guy that's been starting since 8th grade or playing there, and now he's a sophomore, and he's one of their big-time prospects. I love Marcus Burke. Here's a receiver. When you have size and speed, Marcus is 6'4", 180 pounds, but he's also probably a 4'4", legit 4'5" type kid. Gives you that speed. So it's going to be, the one strength of Chaminade is their defense. That's going to be a great matchup. Their quarterback, I think, is very underrated. I think he's committed at Bowling Green. This kid may start next week for Bowling Green. I mean, Ja'Cory Jordan is 6'4", like 200 pounds. They've got talent, and this is going to be probably one of the better 3A matchups we've seen in a while.
What I like about Trinity Catholic is not only they have talent, but unlike the other...
It's Trinity Christian, by the way. Yeah.
Sorry, we get them. Sorry, there's a lot of Trinities in this town, in this state. But, unlike Bowles and unlike UC, Trinity Christian doesn't shy away from games. They play the city schools in Jacks. They played Reed Bolton Reigns. I think they went down to American Heritage this year and shut them out. It was like a 3-0 game or a 6-0 game. So they're not like the other Jacksonville schools in the area. They're not afraid to go extend themselves, go beyond their little comfort zone. And that's why I think that they can pull I think they're going to win. I think they're going to be the school that can beat Chaminade because they're not going to have the same – I don't think Chaminade's going to have the same psychological advantage that most Broward-Dade schools have when they play the schools from North Florida.
Yeah, no doubt. 4A, another good matchup. Here in Bowles and Gibbons. Again, these two schools are typically used to winning. Obviously, Gibbons won the state title a couple years ago. Bowles, it's been a while since they've been back here on the scene on that level. Usually, you're used to seeing Coco and Reigns the last few years and Booker T.
Well, Bowles actually made it last year to the state championship against Booker T and had the lead. And they blew it in the second half. But this is a team that did make it there last year, and they dominated Booker T for a half. And for some reason, their head coach decided to play prevent offense, which I've never seen. They ran the play clock all the way down to 0 on every possession, pretty much. They were ahead, and they basically felt, oh man, and they let Booker T make that one play. That's what Booker T does. They make that one play where they change the whole momentum of the game, and it's like all the momentum went Booker T's way, and Bowles lost. So it's going to be interesting. This team had to fight back to get there this year, and it's going to be interesting if this team is hungry and they look like they have that hunger to get that bad taste out of their mouth from last year.
All right, hopping into 5A. Now we're to the Final Four. With Denellen versus Rickards and American Heritage versus Jesuit. Just off of kind of what I know of the teams, just from historical, I haven't seen any of the teams play besides American Heritage. I know Coach Harris personally for Denellen. I think they'll be ready to play. Obviously, the type of athletes that come out of Rickards traditionally. I like this matchup, but I'm going with the Fighting Price Harrises. Okay. For Denellen and with American Heritage and Jesuit, I'm going with American Heritage Plantation. Anytime you have a South team, I'm going to probably go with them and lean that way because of the speed difference, which is a real thing if you coach down this area. So we're going to go with my predicted matchup is going to be Denellen versus American Heritage.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Heritage is how many former NFL players' sons are on this team. Earl Little Jr., Marvin Jones Jr., Aronde Gadsden Jr., Brian Blades Jr. Like, this team has a lot of ex-football players. Now, the surprise player, and I think he's going to make an impact in this Final Four, I think he has a potential to be a big-time recruit. He's a guy I think the networks are missing on, is Jacoby Spells. I seen him play wide receiver. He also plays corner. He's a junior. I think this is a guy that's one of those kids that's going to make a name for himself in this game. But I've seen Heritage play this year. Offensively, this is probably one of their less talented offenses. It's not because they do have Mark Fletcher, the sophomore running back, but they just don't score a lot. They rely on their defense. Marvin Jones Jr. is basically Brian Burns. He's reincarnated as Brian Burns. They are very difficult to score on. I don't expect a lot of points, even if they get to the state championship. This may be like a 10-7 final if they get that far.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched, obviously living here in St. Petersburg, I'm pretty familiar with the Jesuit program. Matt Thompson, the head coach, is a good friend of mine. They've struggled against the teams from South Florida. I think they've lost their last 5 playoff trips down there. Last year was Northwestern. The last several years before that, it was American Heritage. And really, only one of those times, and that was when they had Malik Davis at running back, did I feel like they had a team that might have a shot. And it's not that there's a huge talent gap. I just don't think the kids at Jesuit, by and large, I don't think they could match up at the intensity level with the kids from American Heritage. I just don't, I just feel like if all things are even, the Heritage kids just, they have a little bit more. They have a little bit more want. They're a little bit more. They play with a little less. They play with a little less fear. I think when it comes down to it, like I said, I've seen a lot of good Jesuit teams, and they've all just seemed to wither in this particular game against these sort of teams. And I just, and I don't know when that's going to stop. I don't think it's going to stop this year. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, I remember they played Gibbons like 2 years ago. The game was real tight, and then Gibbons got it busted off a long run, and they never recovered. You could tell, like, they're one of those teams that if things are going well, they'll play well. You said it best. Malik Davis was the one kid. I remember we even talked about it after the game. I said, you know what? He was the one kid that wasn't afraid of Heritage. Like, he looked for defenders to run over. And I think that's why he's had success even in college, is he had a different mentality, and that's what Jesuit needs. They need a couple of those guys that are like, you know what? We don't care what's across the other side of the field. We're going to go out there and punch them in the mouth.
Yeah, and that's, for that school, and what they require, it's hard to get those type of it's hard to get one or two of those type of players. Malik's a kid with a great mentality, but he's also, a 4.0 student.
No gangsters, man. Come on, they gotta have some gangsters over.
No, not a Jesuit. Jesuit, Jesuit, you gotta pretty much, they want you to be they want you to be able to get into college with or without the sport. Like, that's the thing. You got to be able to get to, the parents that don't have kids that play football pay way too much money for their sons to go there to be put in that situation. So,
all right, hopping in 6A. You have St. Augustine versus Mineola, Lake Mineola. Then you have Palmetto versus Miami Central. I'm going with Mineola against St. Augustine. I think Mineola team, this is the best team that Coach Banks has had at Mineola. They're loaded with a lot of Division I talent. But St. Augustine has a quality ball club as well. And with Palmetto versus Central, I'm going with Miami Central. And I think Miami Central is going to win a state title for 6A. And that's my pick. What about you guys?
Didn't you used to coach at Lake Mineola too?
I did.
All right, just checking.
No, but that's not a. I like how you threw that in there, but that's not. Hey, I'm impartial, man. I'm impartial.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Hey, listen, they did bring in supposedly. I'd actually like to see these guys get to state to see how he could do. But Braden Davis is an out of state, supposedly a big time recruit at the quarterback position. The kid's 6'5", almost 200 pounds. But they got a lot of other kids. They got one thing is you look down this roster, they got big dudes. I mean, Nicholas Campbell, 6'3", 215 pounds. The McGlure kid that plays corner is 6'2", 190 pounds. Brennan Flakes, another D end, is 6'4", 240. Derek Graham, Graham played last year, but they have a lot of guys that have size and athleticism, and the coach at that school did a pretty good job at South Lake, and it seems like he's little by little been building like a little powerhouse there in Central Florida. I'm interested in seeing what they do. I agree. Until somebody beats Central from upstate, I'm going to go with them. They just have so much experience they're not afraid to play anybody in the state. They play all the top teams down here. We talked about it before. When you play elite teams week in and week out, and then you go up and you play a team from up in northern Florida that basically has not even half the talent, it's not fair. I really think sometimes some of these classifications should have a northern and a southern championship because the talent gap and disparity between the two teams is so great.
I follow 6A pretty closely. My alma mater, Lake Gibson High School, is a pretty good school in the classification. They lost to Palmetto this week. They lost on Friday in a really good game. And Palmetto's well coached. Dave Marino, really experienced coach. He's I think they played Central last year. They're not going to beat them. No one, Central's not going to be beat by. It's just I think this is a rematch. It's probably good for these kids. They'll probably make it a more competitive game than it was last year, just because they're familiar with the challenge. But yeah, out of town teams ain't beating Central and Tras-Pal. Like, that ain't happening. Yeah. So I think Central will win. I think Central and Lake Minneola sounds like a fun game. Sounds like it might be, at least in terms of players that hold our interests, it might be the best game of the tournament. So, but again, you're not going against Miami Central. They've won. They've been winning since 2010. I think they won 7 or something like that. So yeah. You're not.
So it's a different caliber athlete,
It just is. And it's a different mentality for for what you do. The mental aspect is so much. Kids at Central, this is winning a state title almost seems like it's second nature. Mm-hmm. Like, if we don't do that, what's the purpose of us playing?
Oh, look, that's why they opted in. They played 1.5 games this year. They got 1.5 games in this year.
But let's look at it though. I mean, should those teams have been punished? When you look at the teams down south.
Absolutely not.
I'm gonna be honest. They should have just put Central in the finals since they've been there so much, and they should have just got a bye to the finals. To be honest with you, and let everybody go against them.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been a true state title game without Miami Central, right?
No, I'm saying you just put them as a bye till the finals. You say, listen, we don't need you. You have your COVID clear till the state finals this year, and hey, you know what? Everybody's gonna have a shot of whacking you guys off.
But that's again, I just think Central, even if they play Mineola, who has some nice looking kids and prospects, it's gonna be a different caliber that they've ever seen before. So I'm going with Central in that one. As far as 7A, you have a nice matchup in Edgewater versus Niceville. I'm going to go with Edgewater in that. And Aquinas versus Bloomingdale, I'm definitely going with Aquinas big. Setting up an Edgewater Aquinas rematch. And I'm going with Edgewater to take 7A.
Everybody's looking at Edgewater, Aquinas, and I think that's certainly that probably is the main event of this year's finals. Don't sleep on Bloomingdale. Bloomingdale's loaded. Bloomingdale is loaded for bear. A lot of players that were in the Armwood program have transferred over there. So, like Augie Hall, who's going to Alabama, Philip Riley, a cornerback, going to Notre Dame. They've got about 3-4 other kids that are going to be playing FBS. And, Aquinas, I saw them. I saw them play Manatee. They beat them 45-0. It looked more like Manatee was overmatched and Aquinas was great. It just looked like Manatee just never really had anything to compete with them. So seeing Aquinas against a little bit more athletic team interests me. So I don't know. Fish is more familiar with the guys at Bloomingdale, but he's much more familiar with Aquinas as a program. I don't like to bet against Roger Harriet. I don't like to bet against that group. They're so experienced. They know what they're going to do, but terms of if you want to go a team as battle tested as Aquinas, Bloomingdale has went out there. They went out there smoke Lakeland.
Who does Bloomingdale play this week in that group?
Who does
Aquinas?
Yeah, you look. I really, really was high watching his film. Philip Riley, the corner, and like you said, Aggie Hall, who's committed to he's committed to Alabama. This is a team. This is basically Armwood moved up to another school, and these are the kids that are basically Armwood kids. A lot of them. I think they also have do they have Charles Montgomery on this team, or they'll run him back?
Stayed at Armwood.
All right, I thought he went over to.
He actually, when everybody was going right, he went left for whatever.
I thought he stayed, but I think this is a year. I saw I thought Edgewater should have beat St. Thomas last year. They went into the game. They are very, very talented, and they know they could. They had St. Thomas beat. They know they could play with them. And 90% of playing St. Thomas and beating them is believing you could beat them. Most teams go on that field, they see that gold helmet, they see that uniform. The only team that wasn't scared was Lakeland, and I thought last year with Edgewater was the first time since Lakeland played them that I saw a team that went on the field at a state title game not afraid of them. And that's a huge thing when you're playing St. Thomas, because there are only 22 guys out there. Even though they got 50 kids that are lined up that could play, Division I football, they can't play them all. And Edgewater's got a very talented team. The Christian Leary kid is the fastest player on the team. No matter what, he's the biggest playmaker, and that's the difference. Is St. Thomas knows these guys can beat them, so it's going to be interesting to see how this rematch goes. But it's a 50-50. I lean a little towards Edgewater in this game as well. I think it wouldn't shock me to see them pull it off this year.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, if Aquinas wins another title, then you're looking at they're beating Venice. They went on to beat Bloomingdale, and they went on to beat Edgewater. So they would have absolutely earned it this time around. People think that, teams just lay down for them. Those are three programs that are not going to lay down for St. Thomas Aquinas. So, and I just want to say, I think they're going to be in for a battle this week against Bloomingdale, because Bloomingdale has players, and they have players, and they're a team that's battle tested. They went into Bryant Stadium and beat the brakes off of Lakeland this year. They beat Armwood twice already. They beat Tampa Bay Tech twice already. So they've beaten some pretty good teams, and they're not going to be. And they've got guys, that can play at that level.
Talking about 8A. You have Apopka versus Seminole and Osceola versus Palmetto. I'm going with Apopka versus Seminole. I'm going Palmetto over Osceola, and I got Palmetto winning the whole thing.
We are all Miami Palmetto fans. That's all I can say.
That's the fighting fish. That's the fighting fish bonds right there. That's the alma mater.
Hey, I used to never admit I went to Palmetto. I am a proud Palmetto alum now. Hey, I jump on that bandwagon. And listen, I jumped on it about 3 years ago. I told Corey about this team when they were all young. I'm like, this is their shot. Now, when I was at Palmetto, I never told anybody I went there. So,
hey, they don't want you now. They're like, you were riding with us before, man. Don't try to go now.
When I drove up to wherever I drove up to last week to film their game, or they know I'm on board. All right, I made the trip to Treasure Coast last week, but
Star power. Palmetto reminds you a lot of the Northwestern teams from 06, 07. They've got the top-rated D tackle in the nation. They probably have the top-rated corner in the nation. One of the top-rated safeties. They got guys that are going to all the big schools.
Yeah, Palmetto reminds me personally a lot of Dr. Phillips in that they're very similar schools. Teams that that they kind of have been built the same way, and this Palmetto team finally they have the experience. They played the last couple of years. Every year they've gotten further in the playoffs, but they're winning games. They're finding ways to win this year. They don't have their quarterback went down in week 1 of the playoffs with a broken leg. I don't know if he's going to be back this week or next week if it's possible, but they've been doing magic on offense. But defensively, this is one of the best defensive teams I've seen. I mean, they can dominate with their defense. They took a 10-0 lead last week early on against Vero, and that was it. Game was over. They never let that team back in the game. So Coach Monasco has a team that I felt like last year could go all the way, but this year They're winning the tough games. They're winning close, and this is a team that's loaded with talent. I mean, Division I Power 5 talent. You don't see many teams that have this type of team. The Seminole team that year that beat Northwestern, I know those kids didn't go to the NFL, but that was a very talented team. The Northwestern teams with Marcus Forston and those guys. This is the most talented team south of A Street that has been this far in the playoffs. And I'm cheering for them. I'm not going to lie. I'm biased towards my Palmetto Panthers. Let's go.
That's a good deal. It's a good deal. Well, talking about the other playoffs, the college football playoff scene, obviously this has turned out to be an interesting year with college football, right? Currently, you have Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, A&M, and Florida all in the mix for those 4 positions. Now, there's going to be a head-to-head matchup with Clemson and Notre Dame, and then with Alabama and Florida. I think the winner of those games automatically go on forward. I think the next 2 spots are going to be decided.
And I think if Clemson wins, Notre Dame is in. So really, the ACC's probably got the best chance at getting 2 in. The Big Ten, God love them. Today they announced that, hey, even if Ohio State doesn't play Michigan because Michigan's got some COVID issues, we're going to figure out a way for them to get the Big Ten title game. And you know what?
Which is smart.
Should, because they're the best team. And if there's no rules, you can create your own rules as you go along. And since this year has been a create the rule as we go along year, good for them.
Fluid.
And let's not act like the SEC wouldn't do the same exact thing. Because they would.
You guys know where I stand. I think, the Notre Dame Clemson game it could be an elimination game. So you're talking about 2 games. I'm gonna hang on to what I said a couple weeks ago. I think Notre Dame is one of the least flawed teams of the top 4. I think Clemson's a talented team, but this reminds me very similar to that 2014 FSU team. They found ways to win, but at the end they didn't get it done. It's not a talent issue. There's just something that I don't like about this Clemson team. I haven't liked them all year. I mean, you could see it 2 years ago. You knew about week 10 that Clemson was winning the national title with Trevor Lawrence. Like, even though Alabama was playing well, you knew they were going to win. There's something missing with this Clemson team. And it wouldn't, like I said, Notre Dame is very sound across the board. They have the one type of team that could beat Clemson. And everybody keeps going, oh, well, Trevor didn't play in the first game. The quarterback wasn't why they lost that game. I mean, you go look at the stats. DJ played great in that game. Trevor can't put up, what's he going to put up, 600 yards? It's not going to matter. That means they're in a shootout if they have to put up 600 yards of offense. But Notre Dame has just been consistent week in, week out. They find ways to win. They haven't really had a bad performance this year, and they've gotten better each week. Alabama's just destroyed everybody in the SEC. It's really impressive how they just destroy everybody. And, Ohio State, like I've talked about it, they're going to probably end up in the playoffs, but they're also very similar to Clemson. They're not as good as they were last year. Their running games, they gave up points to Indiana. The one team we talked about, if Florida doesn't beat Alabama, it's elementary. They're not going to end up in the finals. But Texas A&M is sitting right there. All they need is Notre Dame to beat Clemson. Everybody at Texas A&M is going to be big Notre Dame fans in the ACC title game, because if Notre Dame wins and A&M runs the table, there's going to be a lot of crying people once A&M ends up in that Final Four. There's going to be a lot of crow. A lot of crow
in Tallahassee.
Oh no, I don't. Hey, it ain't.
Tallahassee.
It's coming. We got plenty of weeks to talk about A&M and that whole thing. I'll just say that if Clemson wins, I don't see a path for A&M.
No, there's no question.
Oh yeah, no.
I just don't see a path for them. If like Clemson wins and Alabama wins, I think you can see a situation where, if Clemson wins and Florida wins. Like it's like, all right, between Notre Dame and Bama, who's going to jump out, or would they just say to Ohio State, 6 games ain't enough?
Yeah.
You know,
This would be a great year to have a playing game, really, because it's a shortened year. It would have been a night like it'd be great to have, all right, say Alabama, Notre Dame and Ohio State are undefeated, but you have Clemson even if they had 2 losses, A&M, Florida. It'd be a nice year to kind of have a playing game. You take the next 2 best teams to play for spot number 4. That college football had a chance to really try some things this year, like the NBA. The NBA did a trying game. Like, they did everything right with the COVID thing, from not getting anybody sick to how they presented it on TV. You would have thought some of these other sports would have said, all right, they found the formula. Let's tinker around this year. There's no reason you can't have an extra playoff game this year or a playoff game the week before the playoffs started.
I thought with a few weeks back when, that COVID, when we're starting to see a lot of games canceled and rescheduled, that the playoff committee could have at that point picked their 8 teams and made December 19th their quarterfinal week and said, you know what, these are our 8. They're not going to play anymore until December 19th, so they can be in 3 weeks to kind of get healthy and not worry about some of these COVID issues, and have done it like that. And it doesn't mean that there has to be an 18 playoff every year. I mean, heck, I'm old enough to remember in 1982 when the NFL had a strike season that they lost, I think, 6 or 7 games. They had a 16-team playoff that year because they just figured heck with it. We got, we only playing but so many games. So I thought there were a lot of things they could have done. College football being what it is, they're highly ignorant. They don't want to do anything that takes them out of their, out of their comfort zone. So I'm not surprised they didn't do it. But yeah, I'm with Charles. They could have done some things. As it is, it'll be interesting. Clemson and Notre Dame don't play anymore, so they should be fine. Florida and Alabama play next week for whatever reason, and the SEC should probably not have those games being played, just to assure that these guys have full rosters going into the 19th, because they can't push that game back. Like, that game has to get played. So I'm a little and you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if those games aren't played at some point. Like, LSU is a 23-point dog against Florida. I wouldn't be surprised if that game's not played.
Why? You just think that they don't want these teams to lose players, or just?
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to lose. I wouldn't want Florida or Alabama to go into the title game 16 players down because of a COVID outbreak. So I think you got to be smart. I think Ohio State was, Michigan's had COVID issues. Their game was canceled this week. I don't think that game is going to get played. I did want to, McKinley, you go. Before I want to send a shout out to BYU and Coastal before we're done, though. But if you got to say some more on this, McKinley, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, man, everyone's kind of leaning towards Tom Allen being the coach of the year for this year, or Matt Campbell, which you can kind of pick and say either one of those guys. They're doing a remarkable job, but the job that Jimbo Fisher has done with Texas A&M is also impressive. To have them in a position to even be in the contention to win a playoff berth, but
after yesterday, Jamie Chadwell is my coach of the year. I'm sorry.
Oh, no doubt. But all those guys you can have an argument for, right? It kind of depends where you're sitting on that day, because all of them have had an impressive year. Every one of them.
Yeah. I want to. Like I said, I want to give a shout out to BYU and Coastal. One, it was a heck of a game yesterday. Really fun game, a competitive game. I think a lot of guys. It's funny, and we've all done this for a long time. I always feel like the Sun Belt and is probably of the mid majors is always going to be one of, like, App State's been good. Louisiana under Billy Napier's been good because you can get kids in more recruitable areas. You can get some kids that have Power 5 talent but might miss the measurable a little bit, or maybe their grades weren't up to snuff for some areas, or they might be bounce backs. And seeing how that things was set up, Liberty was supposed to play. Liberty has a COVID outbreak. BYU sends their equipment truck out to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina from Provo, Utah on Wednesday, figuring Maybe. If it doesn't happen, we'll just tell the truck to turn around. These guys make it happen. It's a heck of a football game. And in a year like this, to be able to get 2 9-0 teams facing on December 5th, and what a game that, Coastal Carolina is not going to make the playoff. BYU probably wasn't going to make the playoff had they won. So, this was really a game to try to maybe boost up their New Year's Six standing a little bit and challenge Cincinnati. But I put my hat off to both of these teams for taking this risk. It wasn't necessary for basically putting undefeated seasons on the line, and good for them. And I hope that if Coastal goes on and beats Louisiana in the Sun Belt Championship game, I hope they get something better than the New Orleans Bowl, the Birmingham Bowl. If there was ever a year, maybe they don't end up getting in the New Year's Six, but if there was ever a year to throw a random team in the Citrus Bowl or the Outback Bowl, like this is a year like that. Going 11-0 at Coastal Carolina and taking a game like that, BYU is they're closer to a Power 5 team.
But Corey, just talking about kind of what Fish and you guys were talking about as far as the year that if you're ever going to do something, this would probably be the year, right? I mean, who would want to see that kind of matchup, or maybe Florida State playing FAU?
I don't want to see Florida State playing. Stop mentioning them, all right? We don't have to put them on. Fish is going to end up losing his account because you keep mentioning them. I'm not nice about them anymore, okay? Stop.
I haven't heard a word you guys have said about this, man, honestly.
Good for you, Fish.
Yeah, I'm ignoring the bait that he's trying to trigger. Listen, I'm going the same route as FSU fans. This is year zero. This year does not count. What we seen on the football field did never happened. They beat North Carolina. I watched that. I haven't watched another game. I plead the fifth.
But Fish, you saw. I'm sure you saw a little bit of the BYU Coastal. That was fun, guy. I mean,
it was.
Where we really want to see. That's what you kind of get if you get an expanded.
I've been a huge BYU fan all year. I give Charlotte a lot of credit. They are unconventional offensively for them, but this wasn't the BYU team I've seen all year. I thought early on they did too many trick plays. It's like, dude, you guys have this big old line, just line up, smash these guys in the mouth. I thought they got too fancy in the game. And they never, they were up by 1. They had a chance to put them away on 4th and 1. They just weren't the team that they've been all year and played with the lead and just dominated teams. And BYU's defense has been good all year. They gave up like 300 plus yards rushing. Nobody's been able to run on them. So you got to wonder if those guys question taking that type of team on a short week when you didn't have time to prepare them, because they are kind of like an option team. And usually the teams that don't have a lot of time to prepare for option teams, you saw what happened to them. They just got gashed. And, I understand BYU wanted to improve their resume, but you know what? Don't do it on a 2-day week. You get 2 days to plan and then have to fly across the country. I give Coastal a lot of credit. They did what they had to. They were very physical. The one thing I liked about Coastal so much is they played loose. They played they played like Florida State played in the 80s and 90s. That's how Bobby got Florida State popular. That's how Miami got kids into them. That's how they played like a Florida team the other day. Just fast, aggressive. I mean, they were small, but they could all run. Everybody on their team could run.
Props to Coastal Center, all 5'9", 295 pounds of them. Because blocking BYU's interior defensive line that's a day in itself. So good for him for holding up all game. It was just. I understand why both teams did it. I think they both want that New Year's Six bowl bid, and I don't think either are gonna get it over Cincinnati, unfortunately. But I like the fact that they if they don't play the game, they definitely don't have a shot, So there's not. At the end of the day, you only have to gain by playing it. And as a fan, it made for something unexpected and fun.
Good deal.
Well, one thing I want before we jump off this call, there's one thing that really's been, it gets me going, and I just want before we get off this call, one of the things that McKinley being a coach, and I want to just discuss this one last subject is, a lot of fans talk about player development, coaching the players. McKinley, let's talk about this one subject real quick. How important? How much of a percentage would you play in the success of a team is the players, and how much of a percentage of its coaching? Because so many, especially a lot of these schools say, oh, we can sign whoever we want, we could sign a 3-star, we could develop them, and it's driving me nuts. You look at the top teams in college football, they're winning because they're the most talented. What is your opinion, and Corey's opinion on this? Is it the players? Is it the coaching? Is it a little bit of both? But like, how important is it to have the players?
It always goes back to that saying, Fish. It's about the Jimmys and Joes, right? A talented player can mask so many coaching deficiencies because they're going to make plays that the coach couldn't scheme for, right, or scheme against, because natural ability and natural talent just comes out naturally, right? So a lot of it is talent. It's the reason why Alabama is consistently in a national title contention. There's a reason why Clemson is always in the contention for a national championship. There's a reason why Ohio State is where they are, right? It's talent. It is talent. Yes, they have great coaches. There's great coaches at those schools. But the reason why they're great coaches is because of the talent level. Did you see? Let's put it like this, fellas. Let's use this example. Did you see a difference between Ohio State that just played this past weekend when Larry Johnson coached them, or when Ryan Day coached them, or Urban Meyer coached them? There was no difference at all. You didn't even, if anyone didn't tell you, you wouldn't even know Ryan Day was there. Wasn't there, right? They still had the same talent. Is a gap in disparity in talent over the team they played. That's what it is. And I'm not saying that, just like Nick Saban wasn't at Alabama, right? For a game he missed due to COVID.
It's the Iron Bowl.
Alabama was still Alabama. It was no difference. He still had Devonta Smith, probably the best player in the country that was out there. It's about the Jimmys and the Joes, and it's always about that.
That's always. Coaching isn't, to me, it's a practice thing. It's an in-game thing. Like I mentioned, I thought A&M in the fourth quarter, in the second half of the game against Auburn yesterday, Jimbo put on a clinic, but he doesn't put on that clinic without the talent, without that big offensive line and that running game, and Kellen Mond, taking in his coaching and becoming the player that he is. Mm-hmm. They're not able to shut down Auburn and really just kind of take the ball out of their hands in the final 18 minutes of that game. I look at it, and I go further, and I say, look at the NFL draft. Last year, the playoff teams were Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, Oklahoma. We'll throw Alabama in here as one of the first teams out. Look at their players that are getting drafted every. Look at the first 2 rounds. Mm-hmm. They're full of the players from those 5 schools. Those are the best players. And that's why they're in the playoffs every year. And that's why they're winning titles every year. If you don't have those guys, you're not doing any of those things.
Correct. Why did you bring that up, Fish?
It's just something that it's something I see on message boards, and I see it's always brought to me by people that call me on the phone and like, hey, Florida State could win, or Miami could win, or Florida could win. We don't need the best players. We could win with 3-star kids. And it's just an argument that I can't stand arguing with people anymore. It's like, listen, if you want to be one of the elite programs in college football, you better have a top 5 class. Yeah, you could bring up Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's the best in their conference. If they had to play in the SEC each week, they wouldn't be competing, not week in and week out.
I look at it kind of like, I look at top players. It's kind of like what Ben Affleck said about money in the old movie Boiler Room. And he said, they say money can't buy happiness. That's usually people that don't have any that are saying that. Same thing with top players. You think they can't buy. Usually team programs without top players say they don't need top players.
Absolutely.
That's bottom line.
Absolutely. Good deal.
No doubt, man.
Hey, it's a great cast. If you want to listen to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, also on Anchor, and give us a great rating. We love to hear it, and great to read your feedback. Thanks.
Hey guys, before we get off, I'd like to give props to one of our production guys, Justin Otto. He's here with us this week. He was going to film McKinley's game after we drove an hour and a half up there, but McKinley, didn't tell us it was getting canceled till we were already up there. But
hold on.
Buying lunch next time.
He gave him a box lunch. He gave him a box lunch. He got the COVID. Okay, blame COVID. All right, man. It's all good, man. But we love you, man. But yeah, I just wanted to give him props, and he deserves a little credit for the production of this show and give him a shout out. So hey, to everybody out there, you got to listen to us, man. You'll enjoy these things. We're gonna bring on a guest in a few minutes, and that I think a lot of you guys will enjoy listening to, and look forward to doing this again next week. I'll talk to you later, Corey.
Take care, guys.
Bye, man.